San Francisco has always felt alive to me, like a city that breathes in possibilities and exhales stories. I'm Maya, a 30-year-old graphic designer, and my life here has been a mix of creative intensity, quiet reflection, and twists I never saw coming. My apartment, a sleek, modern space, feels like an extension of myself. It's not large, but it's perfect, minimalist, cozy, and just a short stroll from the design firm where I pour my energy into crafting meaningful projects. My work isn't just a job, it's my heartbeat. Every assignment feels like an opportunity to make something unique, a way to leave my mark. When I need a break from the city's hum, I retreat to a modest park tucked between buildings. It's nothing remarkable, just a pocket of green amid the concrete, but it's my sanctuary. The towering trees, the occasional chatter of birds, it's where I find clarity and recharge my creative spirit. One crisp autumn afternoon, as I sketched project ideas under the shade of a maple tree, the stillness was shattered by a sudden thud. A man had sprawled onto the grass nearby, looking a little dazed. "Are you okay?" I asked, hurrying toward him. He looked up, brushing off his jeans with a sheepish grin. "Yeah, I'm good, just forgot how to walk, apparently." His name was Jake, a charming real estate agent with an easy laugh and a knack for turning strangers into friends. We couldn't have been more different. His outgoing nature contrasted with my quieter demeanor, but something clicked. Over the following weeks, our chance meetings in the park grew into long conversations over coffee. Weekends started to revolve around each other, and soon we were sharing late-night dinners and exploring San Francisco together. The relationship progressed faster than I expected, blending excitement with a tinge of uncertainty. One evening, Jake suggested we move in together. I hesitated. The thought of intertwining my life with someone else's was daunting, but my feelings for him were undeniable. After careful consideration, I agreed. We found a larger apartment in a sunnier part of the city. Its open layout and airy vibe symbolized a fresh start, but cracks appeared sooner than I anticipated. At first, Jake's suggestion to scale back my work hours seemed like a joke, but as he repeated it, I realized he was serious. "You should focus more on us," he'd say, his tone warm but firm. My job wasn't just work, it was a part of my identity. The idea of stepping back felt like erasing a piece of myself. I tried to balance everything, but the strain deepened, especially with the frequent visits from Jake's mother. Mrs. Harrison, a sharp-tongued woman in her 60s, often dropped by unannounced. Her traditional views on family and gender roles clashed with everything I valued. Comments like, "A good home needs a woman's touch," made me feel small, as if my work and ambitions were insignificant. Jake, increasingly aligning with his mother, began echoing her sentiments. The weight of their expectations grew unbearable, and I felt like I was losing my footing on a tightrope stretched too thin. One evening, after an exhausting day, I sat in our apartment feeling like a shadow of myself. It hit me, I was slipping away, my independence drowning in their expectations. Determined to hold on to myself, I devised a secret plan. I told Jake I'd quit my job to focus on us, but in reality, I shifted to freelancing from home. I set up a separate savings account, quietly stashing away income. It was my rebellion, small, silent, but entirely mine. What I didn't realize was that this act of defiance would ignite a confrontation that would reshape everything. Moving in with Jake felt like the beginning of a shared adventure, a chance to build something meaningful together. But as the weeks turned into months, the initial excitement of our new apartment began to wear thin, exposing cracks in the foundation of our relationship that neither of us had fully acknowledged. Jake's comments about my career persisted. "It'd be nice if you were around more," he'd say with an air of concern. "We could spend time making this place really feel like home." He framed it as a loving suggestion, but it struck a chord of discomfort deep within me. At first, I dismissed his remarks, chalking them up to the natural adjustment of cohabitation, but his persistence grew, and with each passing conversation, it felt as though my independence was being slowly eroded. Balancing the demands of my job with the expectations of our relationship became a delicate act, one I wasn't sure I could sustain. Then there was Mrs. Harrison. Jake's mother began stopping by more frequently, her visits cloaked in a veneer of politeness but always carrying an undercurrent of judgment. Her traditional views on what a good woman should be seeped into her every comment, creating an unspoken pressure that I couldn't ignore. One evening, as I chopped vegetables for dinner, Mrs. Harrison arrived unannounced. Her eyes scanned the kitchen like a critic appraising a performance. "It's important to make a home feel warm and inviting," she said, her tone light but her words heavy with implication. "A little more attention to the small things can really transform a space." I forced a smile. "I'm working on it. I want this place to feel comfortable for both of us." "Oh, I'm sure you're doing your best," she replied, the edge in her voice unmistakable. "But sometimes, it's better to focus less on work and more on creating a nurturing environment. That's what makes a house a home." The comment lingered like a bad taste, and it became clear that Jake was beginning to adopt his mother's perspective. His frustrations with my career grew more vocal. "You're always busy, Maya," he said one evening, his tone sharp. "Can't you just take a break and focus on us for once?" I tried to adapt, scaling back my work hours and investing more time in our home, but the more I compromised, the more it felt like I was losing pieces of myself. My work wasn't just a job, it was a reflection of my identity, a source of pride and passion. The tipping point came during a heated argument. Jake, his face flushed with frustration, unleashed his feelings in a torrent. "You don't support me or our future," he shouted. "You're always prioritizing your job over us. This isn't what I signed up for." His words cut deep, leaving me reeling. I had been trying so hard to balance everything, but it seemed that nothing I did was enough. The weight of his expectations, combined with the relentless presence of his mother's opinions, was suffocating me. Desperate to regain some semblance of control, I devised a secret plan. I told Jake I had quit my job, but in reality, I shifted to freelance work, carefully managing projects from home. I opened a separate savings account, tucking away the income one earned. It was a private rebellion, a way to protect my independence in a relationship that seemed determined to strip it away. But the secrecy came at a cost. The effort to maintain the illusion was exhausting, and Jake's frustrations only grew. His mood darkened, his patience thinned, and his outbursts became more frequent. One night, Jake returned home late, his breath heavy with alcohol. "Why are you still working?" he demanded, his voice slurred but accusatory. "I'm not," I replied carefully. "I've been focusing on us, like we talked about." "Don't lie to me, Maya," he snapped, his tone rising. "You're always working, always busy. What's the point of any of this if you can't even commit to our life together?" I tried to reason with him, but his words kept coming, each one sharper than the last. His anger wasn't just about my work, it was about control, about forcing me into a mold that fit his vision of our future. Mrs. Harrison's visits continued to add fuel to the fire. During one of her routine inspections of our apartment, she remarked, "A woman's role is so important in creating a home. It's about priorities, dear. I hope you're not letting your work get in the way of that." Her words, delivered with a saccharine smile, hit me harder than they should have. They weren't just her opinions, they were the invisible strings Jake was using to pull me away from the life I had built for myself. The cracks in our relationship were no longer subtle, they had become deep, jagged chasms, threatening to swallow me whole, and as I stood at the edge, staring into the void, I knew I had to make a choice. Something had to change, before I lost myself entirely. The pressure from Jake and his mother was relentless, a weight pressing in on all sides. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't meet their expectations without losing myself in the process. The constant cycle of pretending and compromising was wearing me down, leaving me feeling like a shadow of the person I used to be. The breaking point came one night after yet another heated argument. Jake was drunk, his emotions raw and unfiltered. "If you can't support me and our future, then what are we even doing here?" he shouted. "I can't keep living like this." His words struck like a dagger, slicing through any illusions I had left about our relationship. In that moment, a painful clarity settled over me. I couldn't keep living under this suffocating weight, the facade, the constant push to be someone I wasn't. "Maybe you're right," I said quietly, my voice trembling. "Maybe this isn't working. I can't keep living like this." Jake stared at me, his anger giving way to shock. "Are you saying you're done?" I nodded, tears threatening to spill. "I can't keep sacrificing who I am to meet expectations I'll never satisfy. I'm sorry, Jake, but I need to leave." His face shifted between disbelief and fury. "You're just going to walk away?" "I'm not walking away from us," I said firmly, despite the tears. "I'm walking away from a life that's breaking me." That night, I packed a bag with the essentials and left. A friend had offered me a place to stay, and though it felt like I was tearing my heart out, I knew it was the only way to reclaim myself. As I walked out of the apartment, a strange mix of sadness and relief washed over me. The life I had tried so hard to build was unraveling, but in its place, I saw the faint outline of a new beginning. In the weeks that followed, I settled into a small apartment of my own. It was modest, but it was mine, a blank canvas for a fresh start. I returned to my graphic design career, welcomed back by supportive colleagues who reminded me why I had chosen this path in the first place. Work became a sanctuary, a source of joy and empowerment. For the first time in years, I felt free to focus on what mattered to me. I explored hobbies I had long neglected, painting, hiking, and even learning to cook. Each small victory felt like a step toward rediscovering myself. One afternoon, while sipping coffee at a local cafe, I ran into old friends. We reminisced and shared stories, and their warmth reminded me that I wasn't as alone as I had feared. Their encouragement gave me strength, affirming that my decision to leave Jake had been the right one. Months later, a message from Jake appeared on my phone. He wanted to meet, to talk about what had happened. He admitted to losing his job and feeling lost without me. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he wrote. "I'd like a chance to make things right." I hesitated. Part of me wanted closure, but another part feared reopening old wounds. After careful thought, I agreed to meet, knowing I was strong enough now to face whatever came next. When I saw Jake, he looked different, older, wearier, his confidence replaced with regret. "I'm sorry for how I treated you," he said, his voice heavy with remorse. "I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. I took you for granted, and I've paid the price for it." His apology was sincere, and for a moment, I felt the weight of our shared history, but I also knew that going back would mean stepping away from the progress I'd made. "I appreciate your apology, Jake," I said gently, "but I've grown a lot since we parted. I've found clarity about what I need in my life, and I can't go backward." He nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "I understand. I hope you find the happiness you deserve." As I walked away, I felt a sense of closure that I hadn't thought possible. The chapter with Jake had ended, and I was free to embrace the future on my terms. I had reclaimed my independence and rediscovered my worth. Though the journey had been painful, it led me to a place of fulfillment and strength. My life was a blank page, and I was ready to write the next chapter, with hope in my heart and confidence in my path.